This word Hoshin is really the most important of these objectives. It's the 2 or 3 or 4 at the most that we're going to concentrate on year in, year out to really push our organization where it needs to go. The word Hoshin actually came, of course, it's a Japanese word. Some of the original people that did it was in the Kobe shipyards in Bridgestone. It actually was 4 words at one time, 4 Japanese words, the Hoshin Kanri, and those rough translation is shiny metal pointing direction. Anybody knows what that is? It's a compass, exactly. So a Hoshin, if you want to look at it, is actually a compass or a compass heading. And anybody that's ever been on a camping trip or a long hike knows that I'm trying to get from point A to point B, but I can very seldom ever do that in a direct line. I'm going to have to make some zigs and zags. I'm going to have to go left for a little while and then come back to the right. But what happens is if you don't periodically stop and check your compass heading, you could get lost. Right? You can get a long way from where it is you're trying to head. And the Hoshin planning process sets out there for us, here's where we're trying to get to, here's the compass heading that we want to be on, and every month, every week, every day, we're going to make some heading corrections. We're going to look and see, are we really headed where we're supposed to be? We're going to let these Hoshins give us guidance and, as far as the direction. Now, how we get there may be different. Right? Depends on what kind of mountain we're trying to climb. Depends on what kind of valley we're going through. Are we in snow country or are we in the middle of the desert? Depending on what kind of process you're putting in place, the how could be vastly different. But it's the where part that's really important at this stage. And the Hoshin tells us a lot about where we're going. Okay? So, if you look at what we're trying to do, we are trying to align the entire organization. If you consider your organization a sum of 4 parts, strategy, systems, processes, and the people, you really can't afford to leave any of those out. Now, as manufacturers, we tend to focus most heavily on what? All right, I heard somebody say people. I heard more people say the process. The results. Okay, yeah. We definitely don't want to, we're not in it for fun, are we? We're here to turn a dollar. I think, in my opinion, is most people work on their systems and their processes. I think it's very easy to go out and launch a Kaizen event that reduces scrap or improves the lead time or makes something safer. Would you agree with that? But we don't often say, we're going to do a Kaizen event because we're going to improve the conditions of our workplace to make our people happier. Now, the HR guys in the room are like, yeah, we should do more of that. That's what we should do. But we don't often do that. And we don't often spend a lot of time with the people at Point of Action talking about the overall strategy of the organization and where they fit in. Would you agree with that? So what we've got to do is we can't leave those elements out, because the minute you start leaving the strategy piece out, then you're going to find out that you're kind of doomed to repeat a lot of cycles over and over again. You ever solve the same problem more than once? Well, guess what? You didn't solve it, right? You're coming back for a second dip. We want to try to eliminate that. So part of what we got to do is we got to get more people involved, and we got to make sure that the work that those people are doing are connected to their strategy, so that we do get those results that we're talking about. We have the sustained profitability. We have customer employee satisfaction. We have that growth and innovation that we're striving for, and that's really the main purpose. When we go to do work with an organization, whether it's a green field or a brown field, it doesn't make any difference. We try to stress that there's a roadmap. And with PE, performance excellence, how are you going to improve the way your organization functions? And when we first get started, everybody wants to get started right here in the middle. Where it goes? Right here in the execute and enable phase. Right? They don't want to do the first part, because they figure, we're in a crisis, we need to save money, we've got to make some improvements in a hurry, or we don't get the product out the door, so let's just run Kaizens, or let's just do DMAIC, or let's just make some quick improvements. Does that sound familiar? Do most of you get tasked the same way? And the problem is that you do a little bit of enablement, maybe teaching people how to do it, so that's how our key to sustainability is everybody understands how to do Kaizen, or they know how to do 5S or visual management. But the problem is when you skip to the middle of the process, you might not be designing with the ideal state in mind. You could be sub-optimizing. Matter of fact, that happens quite a bit. Or you find that you have to come back and repeat things. Or you find that it's not sustainable at all. And what we try to encourage organizations is, if you don't have time to do it right, when are you going to have time to do it over? I know your moms told you this when you were growing up, right? Am I going to get your moms in here to... So what we need to do is focus a little bit more on the front end. Can we assess the organization and find out where you are culturally? Can we find out where your competition is? What is it that you really need to be looking at 5 or 10 years from now? And some people go, so this is when the next complaints. Well, I got no idea what I'm doing tomorrow, let alone what my competition is going to do 3 years from now. Does that sound familiar? Especially in today's economy. Well, one of the issues is that, maybe what I want is the competition to worry about where I'm going, not me worrying about where they're going all the time. It actually takes a lot less energy and a lot less resources to be the person in front than to be the person constantly chasing and trying to keep up. So we want to spend time in this plan and design phase, which is a lot where we see Hoshin Planning really taking over. It's the bridge between where your organization is and the types of work that you're going to do to get it to where you need it to be. And we got to create that solid plan. If I can get this to go. So some key themes to Hoshin Planning. Well, the first one is that really the only way to predict the future is to create it, to be in charge of growing your company in the direction that you want it to go. Instead of constantly worrying about what everybody else is doing, can you make them worry about yourself? The fact that you can put some prevention plans in place, stop loss, but the bottom line is that doesn't always equate to creating new opportunities or growth. Prevention sometimes is just too docile. How do we get ahead of the curve? If everything is a priority, then nothing is. Right? If I'm working on 200 things and I really only have the capacity to get 50 of them done well, I'm not making progress at all. It's Little's Law, right? It's too much inventory to try to control all this stuff. And matter of fact, if I do get them all done, chances are the quality is not what it needs to be. So we need to figure out a way. If you look at the Hoshin Planning process, some people say it's a process to go and select all the things that we're going to work on. I actually challenge that logic. I think Hoshin Planning is a deselection process. It's going to take a lot of ideas that may be very good, and we're saying, these are the ones we're not going to work on because we simply don't have the time, material, resources to make them all happen. It's about leveraging those resources. If you're in an organization right now and you're a manager, a department manager, or a GM, or a supervisor, and you've got 30 employees for every member of management, and you're wondering, why am I so busy? Why am I doing all the work? Well, I had the same question back at you. Why are you doing it that way? Why can't we leverage all the employees in your organization? What I like to tell folks, especially if we're doing a Kaizen event, is chances are everybody gets worried about the solution piece. Well, what am I going to change? What am I going to fix? Most of the time, we find out that the solution is already known by somebody in your organization. It's just asking the right person the right question. And they're dying for you to ask them that question. Would you agree with that? They want you to go out and ask them that question. Well, why would strategy be any different? Why would coming up with a game plan really be a whole lot different? Now, you say, well, I don't want 1,000,000 of these crazy ideas from all these people. They don't understand the business. They don't understand what's going on. Well, why is that? Why don't they understand the nature of your business or what's going on? So we want to try to leverage as many people as possible. And we call it making visible your moon. Now, the classic Hoshin example that people talk about at this point in time is the whole John F. Kennedy experience with NASA and putting somebody on the moon, right? In the beginning of the 60s, he basically went before the nation. He said, by the end of the decade, we're going to do what? Right, and then he had to revise that statement. It wasn't just put a man on the moon. We also had to do what? Bring them back. That's how he got the astronauts involved, right? Because they weren't so excited about just being stuck, And so, yeah, he said, look, we're going to put him in. And at that time, did he have any idea how he was going to do it? He just knew that the Russians were beating our pants, right? I mean, they were putting stuff in orbit all the time and putting dogs up there and cats and whatever else they were putting up there. They were orbiting the Earth and they were sending satellites up. And what were most of our rockets doing at that time? Again, a problem for who? The astronauts. It's like, wait a minute. First, you weren't going to bring me back, and now what you're going to stick me on is blowing up like a Roman candle the 4th of July. This is not a real good idea. So he had no idea how his equipment was going to work. He didn't have people that necessarily wanted to be involved in this. But, he had a lot of breakthroughs that had to occur for him to actually do it. Did he have any idea whether 8.5 years was long enough to make it happen? No, he had no idea. So do you think he went around the room and talked to 25 of his senior leaders and technical advisors and said, do you think this is a good idea? Not a chance. He didn't do any of that. He basically just said, we are going to make this happen, come high water, right? And we're going to figure it out. We're going to put the processes in place. We're going to get the right people in place. He had to create entire agencies like NASA didn't exist. They didn't have NASA back then. It wasn't like there was this whole team of scientists he could point to and said, I know you haven't been doing anything for the last 50 years. Now here's what you're going to be doing. He had to put all those guys together. So that made it a breakthrough. That made it a true Hoshin because it gave us a compass. And it was something that was very important because it was something, you talk to your grandparents and your parents and yourselves and think about where you were doing when this stuff started happening, right? You see the TV. People remember, this is, where they were when, John Glenn did this or, when Alan Shepard did that. I mean, they know all that stuff. And that was important because we needed something as a country to really pull us together.